Most people think they know the Bridgerton family, which is just 8 siblings named in alphabetical order, but the actual family tree is so much more complicated than the show lets on, and buried inside it are secrets that will completely change how you see some of these characters. Edmund and Violet Bridgerton had 8 children, and the interesting thing is that Edmund was born in 1761 and died in 1803, which means he was gone by the time most of his children were even old enough to debut in society. He never saw Anthony become Viscount, never saw Daphne become a Duchess, and never met the characters who would go on to shake this family tree to its roots. That detail matters more than you think, and we will come back to it. Now, Anthony is the eldest, born 1784. He eventually marries Kate Sharma, and the two of them go on to have 4 children: Edmund II, Miles, Charlotte, and Mary. What is interesting about Kate's side of the family is how quietly it folds into the Bridgerton name. Her parents, Miles and Mary Sharma, are both gone by the time her story in the book takes place. So Kate essentially arrives in the Bridgerton family without a family of her own to lean on, but she absorbs the Bridgerton world completely. Benedict is next, born in 1786, and he ends up with Sophie Beck, a situation book readers already know is its own wild thing. Because Sophie is not exactly who she appears to be in society, her stepmother Araminta and stepsisters Rosamond and Posy treat her more like staff than family, and Benedict ends up being the one who sees through it all. They have 4 children together: Charles, Alexander, William, and a daughter they named Violet after his mother. Then comes Colin, born in 1791, and Colin ends up married to Penelope Featherington, born 1796, which is wild if you think about it, because the Featheringtons and the Bridgertons spent years being compared, contrasted, and even pitted against each other in the ton. And then Colin goes and brings one of them right into the family. The beautiful thing is how they fit well into the family tree with their 4 children: Agatha, Thomas, Jane, and George. But here is where things start to get genuinely interesting. And stay with us here, because this next branch of the family tree has a connection that most fans have completely missed, and it directly leads to the storyline we are building toward. Daphne, the eldest daughter, marries Simon Bassett, the Duke of Hastings. What is fascinating about Simon's side of the tree is just how broken it is. His mother, Sarah Bassett, died in 1784, the same year Simon was born. His father, Frederick, was so consumed by grief and resentment that he essentially abandoned Simon emotionally. That trauma runs through his character. The Duke of Hastings once vowed to end his family line with himself. He did not want children. And yet, Daphne and Simon have 5 kids: Amelia, Belinda, Caroline, David, and Edward, born in 1831, 14 years after the 4th. Now, Eloise, born in 1796, is famously the family's rebel, and her branch of the family tree contains a twist. Eloise ends up with a man named Philip Crane, but here is what the show has already shown you. Philip was already married. His first wife was Marina Thompson, and if that name sounds familiar, it should. Marina is the woman from season 1 who was desperately in love with Colin Bridgerton, got rejected, and then disappeared into a quiet, heartbreaking marriage with Philip out in the countryside. Marina struggled deeply with depression after having twins with Philip. She never really recovered, and she died in 1823. And Marina's widower, left behind with 2 children, Oliver and Amanda, and a lot of grief, ends up married to Eloise. The Bridgerton family tree essentially folds Marina Thompson's entire tragic story right back into itself. Eloise steps in and becomes a mother to the twins Marina left behind, and they later have 3 more children: Penelope, Georgiana, and Frederick. But even that is not the storyline that has the entire Bridgerton fandom in a full civil war right now. Francesca, born 1797, the quietest Bridgerton and the most overlooked, who spent 3 seasons in the background playing piano, saying very little. And it turns out she has the most complicated and the most groundbreaking branch of this entire family tree. Francesca marries John Sterling. He is the Earl of Kilmartin, and their relationship is one of the most gentle, understated love stories the show has ever told. No dramatic misunderstandings, no yelling across ballrooms, just 2 quiet people who genuinely like each other, and fans loved it. But what the books have always told us, and what the show started to reveal at the end of season 3, is that John does not live very long. He dies young from what the books describe as a brain aneurysm, and the grief Francesca carries after that is written as one of the most emotionally devastating arcs in the entire series. And then comes the part that broke the internet. In the books, John has a cousin named Michael Sterling. Michael has been quietly, painfully in love with Francesca since the moment he met her, long before John died. He buried those feelings. He stayed loyal to his cousin. He never acted on it. And then John was gone, and Michael and Francesca were left with shared grief, shared guilt, and feelings that neither of them knew what to do with. Their love story is widely considered one of the best in the entire Bridgerton series. Book readers were obsessed with Michael Sterling, but the show made a decision. Michael became Michaela. Showrunner Jess Brownell, who is queer, read the book and immediately connected to Francesca's story in a way that led her somewhere unexpected. She said that Francesca's defining feeling throughout the books is feeling different without quite knowing why, and as a queer woman, she recognized that feeling immediately. So in the season 3 finale, when Francesca meets her husband John's cousin for the first time, it is Michaela Sterling. And the moment they meet, Francesca goes completely quiet, which is the same thing Violet Bridgerton told her earlier in that same episode, that when she first met Edmund, she could barely speak her own name. The show was telling you exactly what it meant. Some fans were devastated, and a petition to restore Michael Sterling gathered over 45,000 signatures. Others were celebrating, saying that Francesca's story had always read as queer. Benedict had already started exploring his own sexuality in season 3, making Bridgerton's first same-sex lead romance part of a much larger shift for the show. Julia Quinn, the author of the original books, publicly addressed the backlash. She said she was a little hesitant at first when Brownell brought the idea to her, but she had long conversations with the showrunner and made one thing extremely clear. Francesca's love for John had to be shown fully and genuinely on screen, because in the book, the entire reason Francesca and Michael's guilt-ridden love story works is that they both adored John. And the show is delivering on that. John and Francesca's relationship in season 3 was quiet, real, and warm, which makes what is coming in Francesca's season even more emotionally loaded. In the books, Francesca and Michael went on to have 2 kids, John, the second, and Janet, solving Francesca's fertility problems, which will be portrayed differently in the show. But Francesca is not the last surprise hiding inside this family tree. Gregory, born 1801, and his branch of the tree has a detail that most people completely gloss over until you see the number and actually stop to count. Gregory ends up with a woman named Lucy Abernathy, and their love story is genuinely one of the most chaotic in the entire series, because when Gregory first meets Lucy, he is not interested in her at all. He is completely besotted with her best friend, Hermione Watson. He falls for Hermione the way Bridgerton men tend to fall, fast, hard, and instantly convinced it is forever. He even asks Lucy to help him win Hermione over, which she agrees to because she genuinely wants to help. And then, slowly, in all the time they spend together, trying to get him closer to someone else, Gregory realizes he has fallen for Lucy instead. But here is where it gets dramatic. By the time Gregory figures out his feelings, Lucy is already betrothed to another man, Lord Hazelby, and her uncle is blackmailing her family into going through with it, using fabricated accusations against her late father. So Lucy walks toward that wedding, knowing she loves Gregory and believing she has no choice. Gregory literally crashes the ceremony. He stands up and professes his love in front of everyone. She rejects him publicly, and he still does not give up. He eventually exposes her uncle's scheme, gets her marriage annulled, and she finally says yes. That is already a lot. But here is the part of Gregory's branch that stops people cold when they see the family tree laid out. Gregory and Lucy went on to have 9 children together. Edmund and Violet had 8, which was already considered a large family for the era. Gregory and Lucy went one further in a family already famous for having 8. Gregory quietly out-Bridgertoned the Bridgertons. Their children are Catherine, Richard, Hermione, Daphne II, Anthony II, Benedict II, Colin II, Eloise II, and Francesca II. They named their children after almost every single Bridgerton sibling. Francesca was the youngest, and Lucy almost did not survive that delivery. Gregory was reportedly devastated at the thought of losing her, which says everything about how deep that love actually ran after the chaos of how it started. And then there is the last sibling, the youngest, the one born in 1803, the same year Edmund Bridgerton died. Hyacinth never met her father. She was named after his favorite flower, and Anthony stepped in as the father figure she never had. And despite that beginning, Hyacinth ends up with what is probably the most unexpectedly layered love story in the entire family tree. She marries Gareth St. Clair, but here is what most people do not realize about Gareth, and this is where the family tree gets genuinely wild. Gareth is Lady Danbury's grandson. Lady Danbury, who has been woven through every single season of this show, essentially becomes family to the Bridgertons. And it was Lady Danbury who set the whole thing in motion because she had been quietly reading all the signs between Hyacinth and Gareth long before either of them admitted it. But Gareth's backstory is where it gets even more complicated. His father, Richard, raised him, but Richard despised him and made no secret of it. When Gareth turned 18, Richard finally revealed why Gareth was not actually his biological son. His birth father was Edward St. Clair, Richard's own brother. Gareth had been living in a house with a man who resented his existence and never told him the truth about where he actually came from. The only person who genuinely loved Gareth before Hyacinth was Lady Danbury. She took him in when Richard cut him off, she paid for his studies, and she spent years watching him become someone worth knowing, right up until the moment she maneuvered him into a seat next to Hyacinth Bridgerton at a musicale. Their love story involves translating a secret Italian diary left behind by Gareth's paternal grandmother, Isabella, which leads them on what is essentially a Regency-era jewel heist. They sneak out at night, they break into the family home, and somewhere in all of it, Hyacinth, the girl who had stumped every suitor in London with her sharp tongue and faster wit, meets the one person who can match her word for word without flinching. Gareth himself once admitted that the only person who had ever truly loved him was his grandmother, until Hyacinth. They marry and have 2 children together, George and Isabella. The family tree closes on that note. The youngest Bridgerton, born in the same year her father died, builds a life with a man who had been abandoned by his, and the woman who connects them both is Lady Danbury, who had already been watching over this family from the very first season. From Edmund and Violet's 8 children, the Bridgerton family tree stretches across marriages, grief, scandal, reinvention, and love stories that refuse to follow the rules the Ton tries to set for them. Every branch has its secrets, every name connects to another, and every sibling, in their own time and in their own way, ends up changing what it means to be a Bridgerton.